Ever tried touching your toes first thing in the morning and felt like a rusty tin man? Well, today you're about to discover the 4 secrets to grease those joints and become as bendy as a gymnast. No warm-up needed. In this video, we're diving into the truth about cold flexibility. So stick around and I'll show you exactly how I got flexible enough to do the splits without a warm-up and how you can too. Spoiler alert, it's not sorcery, it's science. So what is cold flexibility? Cold flexibility is being flexible without a warm-up. And no, it's not just for gymnasts, contortionists, or flexibility freaks. I am about as genetically not gifted for flexibility as they come. In fact, I've got a type of bone shape in my hips called cam morphology that usually so severely restricts hip range of motion that people try to get surgery to fix it. But despite those challenges, I achieved a decent level of cold flexibility, like this. I took this photo in 2022 without any warm-up, and this photo was also taken with 60 seconds of preparation. We actually timed it. Why should you care about cold flexibility? Well, because life doesn't always give you a warm-up. When you begin flexibility training, especially as a stiffer type of person, there tends to be a large discrepancy between the range of motion you can display when warm versus without any warm-up. Proper flexibility training requires hard work, and we may feel sore when we push our bodies past what is naturally comfortable. Feeling sore all the time is not very conducive to expressing our maximum flexibility on command. However, don't mistake feeling sore or even more stiff when you are cold as a sign that you're not making flexibility progress. This is a natural response to the body adapting to the stimulus. The harsh truth is that there is no shortcut to turning your true physiological end range into the range of motion you can access at any time of day. The greater our flexibility becomes when warm, the better carryover it will have to our cold flexibility. This also works the other way around. If you notice your cold flexibility is feeling more accessible, then you can bet your flexibility when fully warmed up will also be better. Unfortunately, this isn't a linear process. It's more like a roller coaster. There will be days when you feel stiffer than normal, and you may go for weeks or months where you feel like you aren't really making any progress. But then, you make a giant leap in progress out of nowhere, and the body finally grants you more range. This is why setting your expectations for progress over years instead of months will keep you committed to the process. I cover my entire 12+ year flexibility journey in great detail in this video. The better your flexibility gets over time, the more your cold range will slowly follow behind it. Although it doesn't always work out perfectly like that. For instance, say you've just been able to sit in a deep squat, butt to heels after training your hip and ankle flexibility for an hour, 2 days a week, for 6 months. You may have to practice this for another 6 months to convince your nervous system to trust you to access it on command. For me, as a super stiff guy, it took a long time. The most important aspect is having a systematic approach to training flexibility and using the right techniques for 10 people like us to ensure we're making progress in our warm flexibility. From there, we can adjust our training to bridge the gap between what we can display with and without a warm-up. For example, just the other day, I stumbled across this picture of myself and Dr. Garrett, one of the coaches in our VIP mentorship program where we help people with hip impingement. As Garrett says in that text message, he remembers that even back in 2018, I could drop into the middle splits without much warm-up. To be clear, it took a ton of work to go from stiff guy with hip impingement to cold splits guy, but there is an exact process to it. So how did I do it? What's the science behind all this? Let's get a little bit nerdy. First, you need to know this. Your muscles, tendons, and fascia all affect how flexible you are. Those not naturally gifted with flexibility, like myself, may have more dense connective tissue and fascia. This dense tissue doesn't budge with regular old static passive stretching. These 10 people require more force and more time under tension to make noticeable changes, whereas someone with less dense and more pliable connective tissues will have an easier time melting into their end ranges. Some of these people even become flexibility teachers because they can do impressive feats of flexibility and contortion. Unfortunately, for us mere mortals, we may need different techniques than these genetically gifted people. When it comes to expressing flexibility, there's also a difference between dynamic and static flexibility. Dynamic flexibility is when you actively move your limb to an end range position in open space. Think about classic strength training exercises through a full range of motion. This is a form of stretching too, as long as the intent is to go to your end range for each rep. In fact, some exercises like Jefferson curls take full range of motion strength training to the next level and can help you supercharge your flexibility. We can categorize this as loaded stretching, which we'll touch on later. Dynamic flexibility can also be done at different speeds, depending on what you need the range for. For example, martial artists need to be able to demonstrate flexibility at high speeds. This is where bounce stretching or ballistic stretching comes into play. Static flexibility, however, refers to a stretched position where the limbs aren't moving, at least to the naked eye. Of course, in reality, it's basically impossible to be truly static, especially as we're sliding deeper into the stretch over time. Some examples of static flexibility are relaxed passive stretching, which doesn't always work for the stiffer type, isometric stretching, like the Van Damme splits, where you actively resist the stretch with the muscles at end range, and contract-relax methods, where you move deeper into a range after contracting the stretched muscles. Demonstrating your flexibility cold depends on your strength at end ranges, so your nervous system has to trust you to enter those ranges whenever and wherever. Your nervous system also needs to be accustomed to generating flexibility both dynamically and statically. So what's the secret sauce to accomplish all this? Well, it's a cocktail of targeted tissue work to soften up your super dense tissues, then ballistic stretching, and loaded stretching. The first technique for cold flexibility is actually not a stretching technique at all. It's targeted tissue work, which includes, but is not limited to, trigger point therapy, deep myofascial release work like Rolfing, cross-fiber and longitudinal friction techniques, and active release techniques, or ART. These deeper muscle massage techniques are usually only reserved for athletes, but I've successfully practiced and taught them to all types of people for all types of purposes, including helping people overcome hip impingement, heal chronic injuries that haven't responded to other treatments, and yes, even achieve cold flexibility. The second technique for cold flexibility is ballistic stretching. Ballistic stretching trains our tissues to go to the end range with control at high speeds. It also profoundly affects our fascial systems to make long-term changes in flexibility. One of the benefits of ballistic-style stretching is that it allows you to spend more time under tension at end range because you're constantly bouncing in and out of your deepest position. This style of stretching is why the Chinese monks can do the splits straight out of bed and put their whole foot in their mouth on command. But be careful, this isn't for beginners. That's why in my Flexibility University curriculum, this is one of the last programs that I teach. First you master the basics, then you go for badass. The third technique for cold flexibility is loaded stretching, aka strength stretching. Ever tried using weights to stretch? You should. Loaded stretching allows you to build strength at end range and is the go-to method for stiffer folks to increase their range of motion. This is because the added load helps assist us into and beyond our normal end range. The more strength we build at our end range, the longer our flexibility sticks with us. For example, check out this clip from my 45-day loaded stretching program.
And I'm going to show you a couple different variations where you can do it either isometric for time, where you're just holding one static position, or dynamic, where you're moving in and out of range, or with extra weight. So here's what it looks like. Get your heel on the platform or on the ground, and then wiggle your back foot back. Spread your wings wide for balance, and then you're going to sink as low as you can. Once you're there, do a couple contract, relaxes to kind of get deep into position. Now I could just hold this for time, like say 30 seconds, or I can go in and out of range for reps. So I'm touching my back knee to the ground and coming back up. I could rest in kind of the regular splits, or add a little bit of weight and go for reps like that. So always ways of progressing. You can progress in the range of motion. You can progress in moving in and out of range. You can progress with adding weight, adding repetitions, adding time. But what you want to know is get into the splits-like position and then slowly over time, just like strength training, work on increasing some variable of your training so you keep getting better. So give those variations a shot.
A bonus technique for cold flexibility is dynamic active flexibility. This refers to the range of motion we can actively move into using the strength of the muscles on the opposing side of the stretched tissues, known as the agonist muscles. Think about the classic hamstring stretch lying on your back using a strap. You can get beyond 90 degrees with the strap, but as soon as you let go, the leg drops back to 90 or less. If you want to demonstrate flexibility cold, no matter where you are, do you bring a strap to help you achieve those positions? Probably not. Instead, we have to train the strength of the agonist muscles to bring us into the stretch actively. Here's a quick clip of how you can put this into practice now.
So when you're doing your ballistics, like say you're doing hamstring ballistics, and if I was standing, I'd be kind of pulsing towards the ground. Something that beginners don't understand is the strength that's involved in your hip flexor muscles to pull yourself down into the position. In gymnastics, they call it compression strength, the ability to compress yourself down into position so that you get a nice forward fold. And I'm using a lot of strength in my quads and hip flexors to do that. So you'll get a little bit of that strengthening, and you'll kind of pick it up as you're doing your stretching. You'll kind of find, oh, when I pull from my hip flexors, I can get deeper and it feels better. It doesn't hurt my back as much. But if you want a couple drills to work on just the isolated strengthening of this side of the joint so that this side of the joint can relax, here's a couple good ones. Sitting on the ground in this long sit position, put your hands on the ground in front of you, stay tall, and try to lift your legs up. You can either just hold it or you can do it for reps. What you'll feel is a strong contraction here. And then you would want to go and do your forward folding, your ballistics, and use that principle of strength here to create length here, strength in front, length in back. Other exercises that you can do is for your straddle positions, same thing, you're here. You can point your toes, lift. You can do it for reps, or you can hold it for time. Or you can go and do standing versions or hanging versions actually, where you are up onto a bar, and anything which is like a toes to bar or knees to elbow or L-sits is good for this hip flexor compression strength. So here's one version. Jump up, hold the bar, and just raise up. You can do it again for reps or time, doesn't really matter. So work on your strength in the front so you get length in the back, and you'll have much better forward folding. So strength and length.
So now you know how to strengthen your muscles to lengthen the other side. But remember, we can't demonstrate high levels of active flexibility if we do not have it passively first. So use the first 3 techniques for cold flexibility to release the brakes, and then use the bonus technique, active flexibility, to complete the package. Given that cold flexibility, aka nearly permanent flexibility, is one of those peak of the mountain kind of goals, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a few do's and don'ts before you start this epic journey. Do stretch with intensity. Treating your flexibility like strength training will mean you need more rest between sessions though. So 1 to 3 times per week may be all you need for this deeper, more intense stretching. Do use your range of motion often in your daily life. Your nervous system will be more inclined to keep the ranges you're building if it knows you'll use them frequently. Spend time in a squat throughout your day, or substitute time in a chair with sitting on the floor in different positions. Or better yet, adopt a movement practice that has you expressing end range often, such as climbing, yoga, or even a martial art. The point is to use your ranges less intensely when you aren't doing your structured, strength-based flexibility training. Safety first. Don't go bouncing into a split and blame me if you pull something. Even though the thought of having cold flexibility sounds cool and you'll probably get some solid likes on Instagram, you'll never get there quickly if you injure yourself. Make sure you're properly warmed up, hydrated, and well recovered if you want to be in this game for the long run. Don't stretch if you're in pain. Muscular discomfort is different than sharp, stabbing pain in either the muscles or the joints. Learning to listen to your body is extremely important with flexibility training. The last thing to say is this: consistency is key. You can't just stretch once and become Mr. Flexy Fantastic. If you're naturally stiff or just beginning your flexibility journey, it may be a long, bumpy road. Luckily, anyone can get there if you have a well thought out and structured approach and use the right techniques for your body. I did it, 20,000 of my students around the world are doing it, and so can you. If you found this video enlightening, check out my 45-day ballistic stretching and loaded stretching programs at gotrom.com. And if you're looking for one-on-one help fixing injuries or getting flexible, schedule a free 15-minute call with me to see if you qualify for our one-on-one VIP mentorship. And as always, please remember, you're just one step away from building or rebuilding your perfect body. Well, today you're about to discover the 4 secrets to grease that body and become... Grease that body? That sounds weird. Grease up your body. It says grease the joints, but I was like, maybe the whole body. And then I was like, no, grease your body. Don't do that. Do not grease your whole body to get flexible. It's not going to work.